Top of the morning to you. The 49ers are active again in the NFL draft. They have just picked CJ West. I'd describe him as a burly defensive tackle out of Indiana. Prior to that, he played for Kent State. But in the season that he played for the Indiana Hoosiers, CJ West might have single-handedly turned the Hoosiers' run defense around. I mean, this was a player that was getting slept on over the course of the first 2 days. And really a product of this insanely deep defensive tackle class. Over 40 of these guys were invited to the NFL Combine. It was only 20-something last year. So the 49ers knew that this DT class was superbly deep, and they were willing to wait until day 3 to get a guy who could be a day 1 starter for the 49ers. That's how good CJ West is. That is how athletic CJ West is. The relative athletic score, by the way, for CJ West is in, and you guys are going to love what you see when we get to it. But I have to say that defensive line competition is going to be very, very interesting for the 49ers. I called it. I said they're following the Rams formula. This was over a month ago, right? This was in mid-March. 49ers jettisoned Malik Collins. They jettisoned Leonard Floyd. They had big-time holes entering this NFL draft at the defensive line, but they wanted to allow this rookie talent to compete. And now they have drafted 3 defensive linemen. And guess what? All 3 of them can actually play on the inside. Even Mykel Williams, who's the 49ers' first-round pick, is able to shift from that edge rusher position to the inside on those pass rushing downs. So you've got Mykel Williams as the first-round pick. Alfred Collins, a big, tall defensive tackle out of Texas, 6'6", 332 pounds, somebody who could operate the one technique position for the 49ers, real nose tackle type, clog up some double teams for San Francisco, extremely double team player. That's Alfred Collins. And now you have CJ West. I would say that CJ West is cut from the DJ Jones mold. I would say he's like Javon Hargrave, but more violent. Hargrave played with a lot of explosiveness and speed, especially earlier in his career. But the 49ers need somebody who can go out there and stiff up against the run. And they need multiple of those guys. They needed to rework this entire defensive line. And CJ West was able to essentially rework the Indiana defensive line all by himself last year with the play that he delivered for the Hoosiers. 6'1", 316 pounds. I'd describe all 3 49ers defensive line picks so far in this draft as guys who are extremely stout run defenders right out of bed. I mean, they're going to plug and play against the run immediately, and they've got real pass rushing upside. CJ West has violent hands, very ferocious, violent hands, which I think that Chris Kasarik is going to look at, and he's going to say, okay, this guy can develop into a big-time pass rusher for us. But they're mainly going to get that pass rushing, I think, from the outside. What you're trying to do is you're trying to set up Nick Bosa. Trying to set up Nick Bosa with power at the other spots. And we know that Mykel Williams has power. We know that Alfred Collins is strong. He's got power. He's got explosion. And I think that CJ West also is going to bring some power to the inside for the 49ers with the violent hands that he uses coming in. So we have several things to look at. We have the relative athletic score here to check out. We also have the 49ers roster to take a good look at. All of these things are living and breathing right now. The 49ers roster changing by the pick. They now have picked 5 straight defensive players to open the draft. You know that Jed York gives hints of whom the 49ers might pick, and on Twitter right before they actually do grab the player, and he said, it looks like we may finally do something different. And then he said, oh, wait, never mind. Robert Saleh just entered the room. So Robert Saleh with these 5 straight defensive picks, obviously a happy man. Here is the relative athletic score for CJ West, 9.16. That is off the charts. Now, the one area where CJ West has a red mark on the relative athletic score is the height, 6'1", but that's not a weakness. The 49ers just picked a tall defensive tackle yesterday in Alfred Collins, who's 6'6", out of the University of Texas. He bats down a lot of passes. He is the lengthy defensive tackle. I think I said offensive tackle. Pardon my French there. He's the defensive tackle, Alfred Collins. CJ West is going to be your shorter, stouter DJ Jones type, and you want that lower center of gravity. 28 bench press reps, really solid. How about this? He is 316 pounds, and he's got a 33-inch vertical leap. That is absurd, and that speaks to his explosion and some of the ferocity that he could play with on an athletic level coming off the line of scrimmage. The 40-yard dash is excellent, 4.95. DJ Jones was 5.04 seconds. You know, one of the things I remember most about DJ Jones that really stuck to me, and I think it's something the 49ers have really missed ever since DJ left in free agency to the Denver Broncos, is the sideline-to-sideline speed of that defensive tackle. You're not always going to have to run sideline to sideline, but there was a game in 2019 on Monday Night Football when Russell Wilson was still prime Russell Wilson, where DJ Jones chased Russell Wilson down to the sideline at 310 pounds as a defensive tackle. And I looked to my left, to my right to make sure other people in the press box had seen that. And to me, it was one of the most impressive athletic displays that I had seen on a football field. And even though you're not going sideline to sideline at all times as a defensive tackle, you are in a wide nine needing to cover an inordinate amount of space to your left and to your right on every single snap. So you better have that explosion. You better have that ability to just get out of the gate really quickly. The vertical jump measures that. The 40, the 20-yard split, and the 10-yard split, those all measure that as well. If you can have a guy at over 300 pounds, and this is 316 pounds for CJ West, at a 1.7 10-yard split, you're going to be very, very happy. All in all, a relative athletic score of 9.16 is downright excellent. So that is how CJ West checks in for the 49ers. Now, we also need to talk about how this roster is shaping up, because when I first made this right here, when I first made the 49ers depth chart for the 2025 season, there was a lot of red in the defensive line room, which is what I'm zooming in on right now. We had a red spot here where Alfred Collins is now. We had a red spot here where Mykel Williams is opposite Nick Bosa. Well, now we are about to remove the last red spot from the defensive line room. We are going to add CJ West into that 3 technique spot. And the font color is all messed up right now, but don't worry, we'll get it all taken care of. We're going to want this background to be reset. Maybe make the background, well, we got to make the text color black there. And now we got to make the background color dark green. Boom. That is the remade starting 49ers defensive line, at least according to my projection right now. We're going to have to see OTAs. We're going to have to see training camp, all of that good stuff. But you've got Nick Bosa, the veteran, on one edge. You got Mykel Williams, the first-round pick, on the other. You've got CJ West and Alfred Collins, 2 defensive tackles picked over the past couple days, in the middle. What a draft for the 49ers, remaking the entire defensive line. This is what we promised they'd do. This is what they have done. I got to go back to the Rams formula. I can go back to the Eagles formula. I think the 49ers are hybridizing what the Rams and the Eagles have done over the years. I think that's a really, really good idea given the success that both of those teams have shown drafting the defensive line. It should be no mystery now why the 49ers cut Malik Collins, why they cut Leonard Floyd. They were a terrible run defense last year. In fact, why don't we bust open the graphic? Head over to the SF Standard. I'm going to be writing a big article on this later today, but this is from yesterday because it's the same theme every day. The 49ers are really working on that defensive line. These are defensive line grades for the 49ers from last season. And we could blow this up to make it even bigger on the screen, because I think that this is just staggering to look at and helps explain so much of how the 49ers are operating this offseason. The pass rush grade is in this column. The run defense grade from last year is in the right side column. Blue is good. Red is bad. Defensive ends are at the top. Defensive tackles are at the bottom. As you can see in the run defense grade column, it's red throughout the whole thing. I mean, that's not good. It is, it's atrocious. So only Nick Bosa had a positive run defense grade for the 49ers last year. So they immediately turned to fixing this. Leonard Floyd is gone. Malik Collins is gone. You're going to have 2 new defensive tackles at the top of this heap. Javon Hargrave is gone. You're going to have Alfred Collins and CJ West at the top of the heap of the defensive tackles. And instead of Leonard Floyd, you're going to have somebody who specializes in run defense, somebody who Robert Saleh and Chris Kasarik think was the best edge setter in college football last year. And that was Michael Williams. It all comes together and makes sense in that regard for the 49ers. They were number 29 in run defense last season. And that's the biggest weakness that the 49ers have to address this year. People will talk about the offensive line and they'll cry and kick and scream about that until the cows come home. But the offensive line was mediocre last year. It wasn't great. Wasn't terrible. It was mediocre. The defensive line was terrible. Outside of Nick Bosa and Yetur Gross-Matos when he was healthy, the 49ers just didn't have it along the defensive line. And no matter how good they get offensively, if they play the type of run defense they did last year in 2025, the season will be over before it started. So the most glaring weakness for this 49ers team is the defense, especially the run defense, and that's what they've been addressing in this NFL draft. Indiana's average depth on tackle against A-gap runs last season was just 2.11 yards. The next closest team was 2.75 yards. Indiana faced only 85 such runs, which was 104th in the country, but had 29 tackles for loss or no gain. So they had the 4th most tackles for loss or no gains on A-gap runs last year, despite facing only 85. So CJ West was a complete stalwart against the run to the level where teams just decided that they didn't want to run against Indiana. They only 85 runs. Like, there are 126 FBS teams in the country. Indiana and the 85 runs they faced into the A-gap, that was the 104th most. So teams decided to go elsewhere. They didn't want to mess with CJ West, the newest 49er. And even when they did decide to mess with CJ West, it didn't turn out well for them. Their average depth on tackle against A-gap runs was only 2.11 yards. If you look at the construction of this 49ers defensive tackle room, Alfred Collins is built a lot like DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead. He's a taller defensive tackle, 6'6", obviously. They talk about his ability to bat down passes. CJ West is going to be the 3-tech. He's going to be compact. He's going to be explosive. He's going to be a lot like DJ Jones. And the 49ers, when we talk about bad run defense, why don't we talk about when they had the best run defense in all of football? And that was in 2021 down the stretch, and then 2022. And those 2 years, especially 2021 down the stretch, there was a big turnaround when they kicked Eric Armstead inside, and he worked next to DJ Jones. And DJ and Eric Armstead had this tremendous rapport in that 2021 season that led the 49ers to a complete turnaround of their run defense. They ranked in the bottom half of the pack in the first half of the season before they figured things out. Armstead moved inside, and they completely figured it out. And I think that, and D'Amico Ryans got better schematically as that year went along too. He was a first-year defensive coordinator. So it all came together for San Francisco, and it all has to come together from a schematic perspective and also from a talent perspective here in 2025 to turn around those atrocious numbers. And I'll go out and say straight up that it looks like they're trying to build a carbon copy of the success that they had a few years ago, but with younger, hungrier players, obviously, with Eric Armstead and DJ Jones no longer being in the building. CJ West had the second fastest 10-yard split of defensive linemen weighing over 315 pounds. The second fastest of guys over 315 pounds. Again, can't get enough of this relative athletic score. The fact that the 49ers were able to get this guy in the 4th round of the NFL draft goes to show you how deep this defensive tackle class is. Just absolutely loaded with players. And the 49ers were able to get Alfred Collins, who has the plus size, and now CJ West, who has the plus athleticism. in the second and fourth rounds of this draft. To recap, it's Mykel Williams in the first, Alfred Collins in the second for the 49ers, and the third defensive lineman taken, CJ West, in the fourth round. San Francisco has now picked 5 times in this NFL draft. They have 6 more selections. They have a total of 11. That is the most in the league. Will they ever pick an offensive player this year? Maybe not. Maybe Robert Saleh. Maybe GM Robert Saleh is the one running this draft. But we can definitely understand what the 49ers are doing. I want to pull up the formula of the Rams and the Eagles so we can compare what San Francisco is doing here, because I really do think it's a hybrid of both of these formulas. Lombardi herself made this graphic, and in the acquisition method column, we have the way that the player was brought to the team. Anything that's shaded means he was brought as a draftee. So the 2024 Rams were heavy on draftees, as you can see here. All of their defensive ends were draftees, and all but 2 of their defensive tackles were draftees. The Eagles, who won the Super Bowl, heavy on draftees. Last year, the 49ers didn't have nearly as much shading here. But I'm going to make one for the 49ers as soon as this draft is over, and I guarantee you it's going to look very similar to these two. The Rams actually drafted 4 defensive linemen last season. The 49ers are up to 3, and they still have 6 picks available. I also go back to what James Gladstone, the Jacksonville GM who was with the Rams, said about this strategy, because Jacksonville, also like the 49ers, wasn't in a hurry to sign veteran defensive linemen. They wanted room for the rookies that they would draft to develop and grab spots. They didn't want a mediocre veteran just because he was more experienced to take the spot of a developing rookie with a lot higher ceiling. So what we see the 49ers doing here is taking a very, very big swing for the future of this defensive line. How did it work out for the Rams? Well, in 2023 and 2024, when they made all these or most of these draft picks along the defensive line, for most of those 2 seasons, there were some growing pains. But by December of 2024, the Rams turned the corner defensively and obviously turned into a team that challenged these guys, the Eagles, more than anyone else in the NFL. The Rams put up a way better fight against Philadelphia than even the Kansas City Chiefs did in the Super Bowl. And the Eagles, well, they've had the benefit of just great drafting along the defensive line from Howie Roseman over a long, long period of time. And I think the 49ers, when I talk about taking a page out of the Eagles playbook, they're looking just for ferocious defensive linemen. The first 2 picks for San Francisco were out of the SEC. I think Howie Roseman likes to do that in Philadelphia. And this third one comes from a smaller football program, but Indiana made the college football playoff this last year, and CJ West was a big, big part of that effort for the Hoosiers. We think of them as a basketball school. The one way that you could become a football school is by picking up guys who are going to be dogs up front, and that's what he was. CJ West just delivered for Indiana in the run game. The name of the game is the run defense. Alfred Collins and CJ West, their combined weight, 649 pounds in the middle of the 49ers defensive line. CJ West had the 10th highest run defense grade for interior defensive linemen last season in all of college football. That's from Pro Football Focus at 88.1%. Nick Wagner has a good stat here from ESPN. CJ West played 64% of his snaps at either the 0 technique over the center or the 1 technique outside shoulder of the center. He says he's comfortable with any spot on the interior defensive line, though. He had 5.5 sacks and 22 pressures for the 1 technique since 2021, which ranks 2nd and 3rd, respectively, in the FBS during that time. That's from Nick Wagner, who does a great job. So, versatile, plays all over the defensive line or all over the interior defensive line. It's interesting because Alfred Collins said the same thing yesterday, and I have it up in the article on the San Francisco Standard. You should definitely check this out while you're at it. But Alfred Collins was priding himself on his ability to play at all defensive line positions. And I think there's going to be a high level of versatility for San Francisco up front. If we zoom out to what they're doing across this whole defense, they're trying to build a robust line that's very, very rigid against the run to solve the biggest problem that they had as a team last year. Collins, West, and Michael Williams. I mean, you add up the weight between those three guys, that's a good 910, 920 pounds. The 49ers have just added between three linemen who are really good at stopping the run. If they can find a good blend of burliness and height, which obviously Michael Williams and Alfred Collins have, and CJ West has the burliness, but if they can find a good complement to Nick Bosa in that way, they can build a very formidable front. And then that could allow the defense behind the front, the back seven, which is going to be filled with smaller and faster guys, to play downhill. And when you think about the NFL, it's been downsizing as a league in general, especially at the skill position weapons over the past 10 to 15 years. And I think that the 49ers recognize that. They see the need for explosiveness and agility on the back end to match up with some of these adaptable offenses. And that's why, we saw Upton Stout picked yesterday. Fast defensive back, but he's small. He's 5'8", 180, but the 4.4, 440 to 19.47 miles per hour in the gauntlet at the NFL Combine. And Nick Martin, the linebacker, he's really fast. He's at a 4.5 40, but he's a little smaller. Long arms like Dre Greenlaw. He's built a lot like Malik Mustafa. So Mustafa himself is on this defense. So you've got these smaller guys, not necessarily long players anymore in the back seven for the 49ers. I want to say shutterbugs, but they're tough. They're tough as hell because these are big-time hitters. We already know Mustafa, but we know that, Nick Martin's a run-and-hit player. We know that, boy, Upton Stout, that guy loves contact. He loves the violence. He even said that yesterday. He said, when the violence is there, I'm going to stick my nose into it. So they want these guys who dip into the best of both worlds on the back end. And I think it's made possible by the downsizing nature of skill position players in the NFL and the upsizing nature of the defensive line. Last year, Leonard Floyd, he's like 235 to 245, maybe 246 pounds dripping wet, right, for the 49ers. He was a pass rush specialist, wasn't great against the run. We already knew that. And it wasn't really a power winner either. He would pick up a lot of dirty cleanup sacks, and he was good at that. But what the 49ers they just washed their hands this offseason, and they said, we just need to overpower you up front. That's what this CJ West pick means. That's what the Alfred Collins pick means. That's what the Michael Williams pick means. The 49ers are just looking to be as imposing as possible on that front line. All right, the 49ers are picking again in 13 picks. It's coming up very, very soon. It really starts to move quickly, this NFL draft, right? Once you get into the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round, the final day of the NFL draft, there's less time in between picks, and it gets very, very fast. So be sure to tune in. We're going to be live again after the 49ers' next pick. Talk to you guys soon.